welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 544 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, whenever you ask to agree with me, I'm asking you to hear me out. This episode is going to start with a congratulations. And that congratulations is towards the LA Dodgers after winning the World Series. Now, I know that I said before the World Series started that the Toronto Blue Jays didn't have a shot in hell to win against the Dodgers. When you look at the rosters, it's not even close. Even though the Toronto Blue Jays did have a better regular season record, I just didn't think that when the Dodgers and how loaded they were, when they played their best, I didn't think not just the Blue Jays, anybody in baseball had a shot to beat the Dodgers. I'm not going to say I was correct, even though the Dodgers did win the World Series. But what I will say is I didn't give the Blue Jays as much credit as I thought, or as much credit as I should have. I'll say that. But I'm kind of conflicted about it. Because while, yes, the Dodgers did win the World Series, they did win in 7 games. And I think 2 of those games went into extra innings. One of them went into 18 extra innings. I think 2 things are true. In the grand scheme of things, I do think the better team won. However, I think the Blue Jays played better than the Dodgers. In no way, shape, or form should this series have, when you look at the rosters, in no way, shape, or form should this series have gone to 7 games. In no way, shape, or form did we have, or should we have gone into extra innings in the 7th game of the World Series when you look at the roster that the Dodgers have and when you look at the roster that the Toronto Blue Jays have. Now, again, I'm not trying to disrespect the Toronto Blue Jays. I think they have a phenomenal roster. When you talk about Springer, when you talk about Vlad, when you talk about Brick, they have a really good roster. But there's a reason why a lot of people are saying that the Dodgers are breaking baseball. The Dodgers are a cheat code. The Dodgers is going to be the reason why baseball has to implement a salary cap, because just the sheer amount of people, good people that they have and they can afford, there should be no reason why this series went to 7 games. So I do think the better team won. But the Dodgers didn't play like the better team majority of the World Series. The Toronto Blue Jays played like the better team. In fact, even in that 7th game, I think it took a late home run for the Dodgers to tie it up just to get into extra innings, but the Blue Jays had it wrapped up majority of the game. I think they were up 4-2 for the longest. This World Series proved a lot. Not only did it prove that, yes, the Dodgers, that they're the best team in baseball. They have been for the last 2 years, which is why I think they became the first team since the Yankees in the 90s, I believe, to go back-to-back. It's also, I think this World Series also proved that name alone doesn't win you something. Name alone doesn't win you a World Series, doesn't win you an NBA championship, doesn't win you a Super Bowl, doesn't win you a Stanley Cup. Trust and believe. There was, as good as the Dodgers were, they had their moments, and their moments is why they won, because their team is so stacked. Their moments are better than other, the Blue Jays moments. However, if I would have woke up today, if we would have woke up today and said and saw that the Blue Jays won, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. as great as Freddie Freeman was, I think he really only had one moment, and that was the walk-off, I think it was home run in this 18th inning game. He didn't really do much majority of the World Series. Mookie Betts, as much as I love Mookie Betts, he didn't do much in the World Series outside of, I think, the double play to end the World Series. Shohei Ohtani didn't do much outside of, I think, the first game of the World Series. When your heavy hitters don't come to play, it doesn't matter the name on the jersey. If your heavy hitters don't come to play, the other team always has a shot. Shout out to Yokomoto or Yohomoto. I know if I said your name wrong, bro, I apologize. But he won the World Series MVP essentially because he was clutch in Game 6 and 7 when it came to pitching. Baseball is different. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I am a baseball savant. I'm not going to sit here and say that I am an expert when it comes to baseball. But one thing that I do know is baseball is also an ultimate team sport, meaning you can't just have a name. If that's the case, Mike Trout would be a multiple-time World Series champion because he's been the best player in baseball for the longest. Bryce Harper would have a World Series. Like, baseball isn't just you have to have a team. And one thing that you saw in the World Series is that majority of the World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays played better as a team than the Dodgers. It's just the Dodgers won the moments. And the moments is what won them the World Series. Again, shout out to Yamamoto for winning the MVP. He was exceptional. The fact that he pitched, I think, over 100 pitches in Game 6 and then came right back in Game 7 and closed it out. You know, especially when the Toronto Blue Jays, they were down. And I think a couple of those times the bases were loaded. Which kind of brings me to the Dodgers. I mean, not the Dodgers, the Blue Jays. As much as I, again, did not give them a shot to go into the World Series, and there's no such thing as participation trophies. There's no such thing as moral victories. What I will say is, if the Dodgers want to hang, if the Blue Jays want to hang their hat on anything, understand that they were the better team, or they played like the better team majority of the World Series. It's just you're playing arguably the most loaded roster in MLB history. And which then goes back to, what I was just saying, being loaded doesn't really mean anything because most of their best players had moments and stretches, which is why they won, but they didn't really play their best. And the Dodgers are really a case study on the feeling of when is enough. When is too much? When is enough too much? Because the question was raised last year when they got all the pieces that they had, and they were able to afford those pieces. A lot of that is because of the deal that they gave Shohei Ohtani. They were allowed to give Shohei Ohtani, which is extremely back heavy when it comes to payment. But then you see them get Yamamoto, who, again, was the World Series MVP. Then you see them get Blake Snell. Then it's just, and now, I know people are joking about it, but they have enough money to go get a star pitcher. They have enough money to go get another star player. So it's like it's not shocking at all. I know this is usually how it is, but it's not shocking at all that the Dodgers are seismic favorites to three-peat because they have the roster. They have the best player in baseball in Shohei Ohtani, and they have enough money to go get some big names while already having big names. You know, I didn't realize how many legacies were cemented, not just with this World Series, but I think this team could look very different because, again, Clayton Kershaw, he's done. He's retired. He retired at the end of the season, and even though a lot of people don't give him the World Series championship for last year, he's a 3-time World Series champion and go down as one of the greatest pitchers ever. Freddie Freeman hasn't said that he's going to retire or anything, but I think this is his third. I know he has one with the Braves and 2 with the Dodgers, and a lot of people are saying that he should try to make his way back to the Braves so he can retire because, his career is closer to the end than the beginning. Mookie Betts, this is his 4th World Series. Shohei Ohtani, this is already his 2nd. People's legacies have been written in these last 2 years. It's like if you think about it, man, if a lot of these players ended their career today, like Shohei Ohtani, perfect example. If Shohei Ohtani ended his career today, he is by far a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you just did a blind resume and you didn't see, and you just look at the accolades that Mookie Betts has, you would argue that he's one of the greatest players ever, especially when you talk about the accomplishments. If you did a blind test and just look at the accolades, you would say, or you could argue that Clayton Kershaw is one of the greatest pitchers ever. And you can do the same exact thing, obviously the blind resume and accolades for Freddie Freeman. It's like, again, the better team won. But that doesn't necessarily mean they were playing like the better team for the majority of the series. In fact, they weren't playing like the better team for the majority of the series because the series went to 7 games. And again, I have all the respect in the world for the Toronto Blue Jays for making it to the World Series, for forcing a Game 7, and for playing like the better team majority of the World Series. But if you just look at the rosters, in no way, shape, or form would anybody say, in my opinion, outside of people in Canada, would say that Toronto Blue Jays were a better team, even though they played like the better team. And that's interesting now that I'm really sitting here thinking about it, because if the Toronto Blue Jays won, I probably would say the same thing, just in reverse. I don't think the better team won, but the team that played like the better team, if that makes sense, and the Toronto Blue Jays won. But obviously that didn't happen. Congratulations to them. And again, congratulations to the Red Sox, or not Red Sox, what in the world? Congratulations to the Dodgers for winning this year's World Series, and I think being the first team since the 90s to repeat as World Series champions. And look, P.S. side note, people knew this was going to happen. What I mean by that, calm down. What I'm saying is, you see social media is set ablaze. You see that a lot of people are either for the whole, Dodgers win, and then you see them doing Not Like Us. You see them hyping up the Kendrick and Drake beef. You see them using Kendrick Lamar songs on commercials. You knew this was going to happen. You knew this was going to happen before the World Series even started. It would have been in reverse. They would have used back-to-back. They would have used Drake songs if Toronto won. The MLB, ESPN, all the sports pundits was using the Kendrick and Drake beef to promote the World Series. So why are people so shocked that once the Dodgers won the World Series, that's when they start using Kendrick Lamar songs? The same exact thing would have happened if the Toronto Blue Jays would have won, except they would have used Drake songs. You know, I understand, even though I kind of don't, because it's like you're your own person, make your own decision. But I understand that the Kendrick and Drake beef separated a lot of two fan bases. My thing is this, though. You knew this was going to happen. So for people that's so upset, it's like, oh, that's so corny. It would have been the same way if if Toronto won. Hell, Drake was at the game. So congratulations to the Dodgers for winning this year's World Series. Shout out to Yamamoto. Again, I'm sure I said your name wrong. I apologize, but shout out to him for winning the MVP. Well deserved. So, speaking of well deserved, I need to talk about this Ja Morant situation because I think there's a lot of blame to go around for the state of Ja Morant's relationship with the Memphis Grizzlies organization. Ja Morant, who has been interestingly non-vocal when it comes to issues that he's had, and his instruction to the media to, quote, go ask management, essentially got him suspended for one game. Now, if you want to look at the grand total or the grand scope of Ja Morant's play this season, it's looked like Jesus loves you. It has looked like there has been a disconnect between him and, I'm not going to say the organization, but just the game. He hasn't played well. It doesn't look like he's been aggressive. It doesn't look like the Ja Morant that we know him to be. He has been far from that. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion from a lot of the people, the media pundits that I've heard, some of the things that I've seen. I'm going to give you my opinion. Obviously, I don't know Ja Morant. I don't know anybody in the Grizzlies organization. So all of this is my opinion. I believe that Ja Morant was a fan of Taylor Jenkins. Maybe not a fan of Taylor Jenkins as the person, but a fan of Taylor Jenkins as the basketball coach. As he was a fan of the offensive, defensive schemes that Taylor Jenkins drew up. And I think you can see that because the coach right now for the Memphis Grizzlies was the assistant coach for Taylor Jenkins. Or was a assistant coach for Taylor Jenkins, and he's a Euro person. He's a Euro coach. And when you look at a lot of his rotations, when you look at a lot of his schemes, when you look at a lot of his plays, they are very Eurocentric. Now, that would not be an issue if it were a Euro team. What he likes to do is he'll have Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr. play 3-4 minute intervals and then get pulled out for 5-6 minutes. That's not an issue in EuroLeague because, it's that the league is a little closer to each other as far as talent-wise in the NBA. But that doesn't work in the NBA. In the NBA, you need time to develop a rhythm. You need time to develop, your shot. You need time on the floor to get in the groove of the game. When you're playing somebody for 3-4 minutes and then pull them, you're unable to do that. So I was so confused as to why John Morant looked so bad, so disinterested early on in this season. It makes perfect sense now. They said that he got suspended for using words detrimental to the team. Or the direct quote was actions detrimental to the team. Which, and people are speculating that he had a back and forth or he had a disagreement with the head coach or coaching staff. I understand completely, especially if the coaching staff is essentially hindering you from playing your best or being your best or getting yourself into a rhythm. I said this once they fired Taylor Jenkins. One, they should not have fired Taylor Jenkins, but two, you have to make sure that the person that, especially when you have a superstar/star on the team, you have to make sure that they can gel with that player. They have to make sure that whoever you're bringing in is able to get the best out of your best player. And it seems like the coach for this team has not been able to do that. And John Morant sees that. Jaren Jackson Jr. sees that, which is why I think Draymond Green even said it seems like there's a silent protest going on in Memphis right now. Which is why I don't think that John Morant's going to be there much longer. Especially when you see his interactions with the media, getting suspended, then his interaction with the media again. It just doesn't seem like John Morant is long for Memphis. I knew, again, actions speak louder than words. You can say that you're trying to compete, but when you trade your second/third best player or the player that's also been there the most consistent due to John Morant being injured and Jaren Jackson Jr. being injured and Desmond Bane, when you trade him, that tells you all you need to know. And I think Mark Spears was saying that John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. were also available, but teams didn't want to handle that, take on that contract, and off the field or off the court issues. It's just a lot that John Morant should not have to go through, but that's just what's going through. Again, I just do not believe John Morant is going to be in Memphis much longer, because it just seems like the coach that they hired and John Morant are not on the same page. Now, John Morant does have some responsibility in all this. A lot of people don't understand what the word professionalism means. On top of that, a lot of people don't know how to be professional. While I agree with a lot of the assumptions that I have as to why John Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies aren't seeing eye to eye right now, I also believe that John Morant has been very unprofessional in this whole situation. I believe that John Morant has to be better, because this isn't his final. I don't believe this is his final stop. And again, if you go back to what Mark Spears said, there's a lot of teams that's watching this interaction play out. There's a lot of teams that also know, actually every team also knows about the off-court things that's going on with John Morant. It's like, you don't want your actions to burn bridges that you don't know are there yet. You don't want your actions to ruin relationships that you don't know that you need right now. And I'm not saying just shut up and take it. But what I'm saying is be professional about it. Yeah, I understand you may not like the coaching team, and people clearly know how good John Morant is because we've seen it. But just go out there and play the best that you can, and then, just keep it moving. Don't air out your grievances, which he essentially didn't do, but don't air out your grievances publicly. It seems like, from what Mark Spears and all the insiders in the NBA are saying, Memphis is headed towards a fire sale. And John Morant is probably the prized possession of that. But I would just say he has shown a bit of unprofessionalism in this entire situation. From going back and forth with the media, talking about go ask the coaching staff, and that's what the coaching staff told you, right? Like, let's not, come on. These people, the media has a job to do as well. Whether you agree with it or not, they're on the clock. They're doing their job just like you're doing your job on the basketball court. Again, let's not burn bridges that you don't know you need yet. But I do understand where the frustration in Memphis, moreover, John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., I understand where their frustration is coming from. I just wish that they'd act on a little more professionally. And because again, this is all speculation, if they are doing a silent protest, it's not hard to see. It's not hard to see that you're not engaged. It's not hard to see that you're not really trying to be a part of the situation when you're doing a wheel route or a wheel play, which is essentially pass and moving, and John Morant passes the ball and then he stands there. Or John Morant would take 2 dribbles, highly contested, and still shoot the ball. Or the one superpower that John Morant has, his explosiveness and being able to get to the rim, he very rarely and very seldomly has done that early in the season. Like, come on, we can see that, bro. But we'll see, man. I think that this is a very tumultuous situation. And I don't think John Morant is long for Memphis. Just like I think Memphis doesn't, at least at this point, I think their best bet is to get off of John Morant. But we'll see. We will see. Speaking of we'll see, man, let's talk about Auburn and Hugh Freeze. We've been talking about a string of coaches and, unfortunately, ADs that have gotten fired in college football. We talked about James Franklin. We talked about Brian Kelly. We talked about Scott Woodward. We didn't really talk about it, but, there's been a bunch of other coaches that's been fired, like homie from Arkansas, or what's the name, Gundy from Oklahoma State. There's been a lot of coaches that have gotten early season exits in college football. And while the season is close to the end, it's still going on. Another coach that has seen his last day as the coach of the current team is Hugh Freeze in Auburn. Now, Auburn is a very interesting Auburn and Hugh Freeze is a very interesting case study. I don't think that there was any coach in college football going into the season on more of a hot seat than Hugh Freeze at Auburn. In fact, I think the thing that kept him employed longer than many people probably thought is the fact of while Auburn was losing games, they were competitive in games that a lot of people thought they would not be competitive in. A lot of people looked at Auburn and said, well, they haven't been great in a while. In fact, I don't think Auburn's been really good since Bo Nix was there. And Hugh Freeze hasn't really been good as a coach. Even though, again, they were close to beating Alabama. They were close to beating a few top teams, but they just didn't get there. The cherry on top was Auburn losing to Kentucky. Kentucky, who in all intents and purposes is having a very down year. And you were only able to muster up, I believe, 3 points in that game. That was the icing on the cake. Now, one of the reasons why I said that this is a very interesting case study is because if you look at Hugh Freeze and you look at some of his accomplishments, he has a Sun Belt championship when he was the coach of Arkansas State, which is why a lot of people, if you really listen to them talk about Hugh Freeze, they call him the Sun Belt coach. I talked about this when I talked about Brian Kelly and the difference between coaching at Notre Dame compared to coaching at LSU. Do I think that Hugh Freeze is a bad coach? Probably not, even though he's only really worked at one place. Like, it really worked out for him at one place or two places. Lambuth, wherever the hell that is, and Arkansas State. Since then, obviously it was a disaster at Ole Miss. It didn't work at Liberty, and it hasn't worked at Auburn. He hasn't shown to be a great head coach. But clearly that one Sun Belt and MSC West Division championship, which he won 2 of at Lambuth, that has gotten them much further than I guess a lot of people have thought. But I don't think there's not a more unsurprising firing than Hugh Freeze getting fired from Auburn. I just don't. He hasn't, in 2 years, he hasn't done really anything in Auburn worth noting. In fact, the best thing that's happened to Auburn the last 2 years was them retiring Cam Newton's jersey this year. But even in that, they got destroyed that game. So, which then kind of brings me to my next point, and there's a lot of head coaching jobs and a lot of seemingly good programs and seemingly good organizations that are going to need a head coach. And I think Auburn is in a bad place right now. In a sense of, when you look, I wouldn't say Auburn is better than Penn State as far as job-wise. I wouldn't say that Auburn's a better job than Penn State. I know they just hired an AD, even though I think that if the governor of your state has anything to say and has a prominent voice in who you keep and retain as coach and AD, I don't think that's a good situation. But a lot of people are going to say that LSU is a better situation than Auburn. A lot of people are going to say that something like Arkansas can be better. Maybe Kellen DeBoer leaves Alabama. Who knows? Maybe Lane Kiffin leaves Oklahoma or Ole Miss. If those happen, both of those teams are much better coaching situations than Auburn. It's just, where does Auburn go? It's always important what your next step is in terms of hiring a head coach. And it's always important that you get it right. Because as we see with the Hugh Freeze situation, this is what happens when you get it wrong. It sets your program back. You're seeing students not even think. Auburn is obviously it's in Alabama with, Roll Tide being there, but Auburn has taken major hits when it comes to recruiting. A school that has had I'm not going to say recent, but has had a championship in the last decade can't even get recruiting like that. So I think that it's very important, obviously, that Auburn gets it right, but it's like, who are you going to hire? Obviously, this was a bad hire. Hugh Freeze, it just didn't, kind of like Brian Kelly, just worse. It didn't seem like Hugh Freeze fit at all. And I'm confused because Auburn saw what he did in Ole Miss, which wasn't much. So it's like, let me see. In the first season at Auburn, Hugh Freeze, they went 6-6. They won the Egg Bowl. They finished 9-3 in the second year. So it's like, you kind of know, I don't know. Yeah, I think Auburn is a tough gig because it's like there's better jobs, at least on paper it seems like there's better jobs that have more resources, have more money, better in recruiting, And honestly, maybe he goes back to the Sun Belt. I don't know, because that's where Hugh Freeze found the most success. But it didn't look good. And his name is Danny. It didn't look good in the SEC. So, hell, maybe, who knows what's going to happen. Well, I don't know if that's even a good fit either. But I don't know what happens with Dabo Swinney. Does he keep his job as a Clemson head coach? That's another job that Auburn might have to compete with. And you're talking about a team in the South. Like, that's a tough. On top of that is Clemson, who's won a more recent national championship, who has number one draft pick. I don't know, man. Auburn's in a tough spot. That's all I'll say about that. But speaking of tough spot, man, let's talk about week 9 of the NFL season, and let's start with the marquee game, the biggest game of the week, and that was the Buffalo Bills playing the Kansas City Chiefs at home and beating them 28-21. Now, I know that going into the game, I said that it was a lose-lose situation, or a win-lose-lose situation for the Buffalo Bills if they were to win or they were to lose. If they were to win, and you heard a lot of people say this, it was going to be, well, the Buffalo Bills always do this in the regular season. They have one of the best winning or Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have one of the best winning records against Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs. I think after this win, they're like 6-1 or 5-1 against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season. And everyone's going to say, again, this is essentially the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl, seeing as though they don't have one. And they usually see Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs and ultimately lose. In fact, I don't think that Josh Allen has beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So that's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are clearly saying, yeah, we don't care what happens in the regular season. Let's see what happens in the playoffs. And I also said if they were to lose, the narrative would spiral that, oh, you can't beat Patrick Mahomes when it really counts. Or Patrick Mahomes owns you again. So I think obviously you want to win the game, but narrative-wise, it was a lose-lose for for the Bills. However, we saw the game. And I think that there were a lot of missed opportunities from the Chiefs. And the defense, the thing that has been, lack of a better term, the Achilles heel for the Buffalo Bills, showed up in key moments against the Chiefs. I think this was one of the first times this was the worst pass percentage that Patrick Mahomes had all season. They only scored 21 points. There's not a receiver that had over 80 yards. Patrick Mahomes didn't have a passing touchdown, but he did have an interception. In fact, he didn't have a touchdown, period. It was overall, the Bills played a better game. Josh Allen didn't have to do much. 23 for 26, 273 yards. He only had one touchdown. It was James Cook, 20. I told you guys this. The key to this Buffalo Bills team is James Cook. 27 carries for 114 yards. While no, he didn't have a touchdown, he averaged 4.2 yards a carry. Dalton Kincaid, 6 receptions for 101 yards and 1 touchdown. The Buffalo Bills played like the Buffalo Bills usually play. Their defense wasn't great, but gave up big, not gave up, but had big moments. Josh Allen did what he was supposed to do, and James Cook ran all through the Kansas City Chiefs defense. But I will say that this game taught me more about the Kansas City Chiefs than the Buffalo Bills, and I am concerned when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Because quiet as it's kept, the Kansas City Chiefs right now have the same record as the Carolina Panthers. On top of that, if the playoffs were to start today, the Kansas City Chiefs are not in the playoffs. Sitting at 5-4, 1-3 away from home, that's not good. I'm not questioning how great Patrick Mahomes is. I'm not questioning how great Andy Reid is as a coach or Steve Spagnuolo is as a defensive coordinator. I'm not questioning that. But as great as Patrick Mahomes is, he's been able to, put a blanket on a lot of issues that this team has had. One major issue has been their offensive line. On top of Patrick Mahomes being so great, their defense has been great as well. Their defense has carried them a lot of the time. However, at least this year, their defense has not been able to do that. And their offense, which has been explosive at times, was not explosive. I mean, Kareem Hunt had 11 carries for 49 yards. I'm losing more and more faith in this team because the holes that they usually have had, I think that they can still go and make a run in the playoffs and make it to the Super Bowl, maybe even win it because they have Patrick Mahomes. Because they have Chris Jones on the defensive side of the ball. But you're 1-3 away from Arrowhead. You're 5-4. If the playoffs started, you would not be in it. I'm starting to lose more and more faith in the Kansas City Chiefs' ability, and Patrick Mahomes' ability to cover up the holes that he's been able to cover up majority of his recent career. Because the Bills' defense isn't even great, and it wasn't like a barn burn. The Kansas City Chiefs had their opportunities at the end. It's just they were unable to capitalize. And, yeah. Patrick Mahomes had a QBR of 50 and a passer rating of 57.2. Compared to Josh Allen's 83 QBR, or 84 if you want to round up, and a passer rating of 123.2. Yeah, that's... On top of that, Kansas City going into this game had a clear path to make it to get the 1 seed, which I think is much needed in the AFC. Not just the 1 seed, but home field advantage. When you see the teams that you have to play in the AFC, that's going to be a tough gauntlet. And you want as many advantages as you can. Because imagine the Ravens get as the 7th seed, which means that they would have been going into the playoffs hot. That's the last thing you want to see coming to your building. Or imagine if the Ravens win the division. Do you want to go to Baltimore with a Ravens team rolling? With a Steelers team rolling? And then do you want to play an AFC Championship back? Because right now it looks like, I know that we'll see what happens with the Patriots, but the Bills could get the number 1 seed. Yeah, man, this is a big game. So we'll see. But congratulations to the Buffalo Bills for beating the Kansas City Chiefs 28-21. Let's talk about it. So, Sunday Night Football happened, and the Seattle Seahawks went into Washington and absolutely demolished the Commanders 38-14. And I know that's not close, but it wasn't as close as 38-14. The Seahawks, yeah. Sam Darnold went 21 for. Sam Darnold missed 3 passes. And one of those passes was an interception. 330 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jackson Smith-Njigba had 8 receptions for 129 yards. Cody White got his first catch of the season for 60 yards and a touchdown. Torrey Holton, who I looked it up, didn't do anything last week, had 4 catches for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. The defense strikes again for the Washington Commanders. The defense is not good. The defense has not been good. And if you remember in my preseason predictions and preseason breakdown, I said, look, as great as the Washington Commanders were last year, making it to the NFC Championship, do not think that this team has the chance, has the ability to repeat with the defense being how it is. I'm looking like a prophet at this point. Because the defense, yet again let the team down. Trey Amos getting cooked. Frankie Louvu getting suspended and unsuspended with drop tackles. Please, Jesus, don't get me started with Marshawn Lattimore, even though he did get hurt. Sabres still, the Washington Commanders, they're not a good team. Especially on the defensive side of the ball, especially when their offense is not fully healthy. Terry would have been good to have in this game. But the argument, the biggest talking point, and the reason why this is the second game I'm talking about, came at the end. Game well out of reach. I think it was 38-7 at this time. And Jayden Daniels is still in the game. And one thing leads to another, and he dislocates. He gets tackled, tries to brace his fall by putting his arm out. You guessed it, what happened next. Dislocated elbow. Out for, as you can see for all my YouTube audience, the man has a sling on his arm. He's going to be out for a good minute. Now, they're saying that he could possibly, because it's not his throwing arm, he could possibly play this season. I think when you see the history that the Washington team has, there should be no ray in heaven or hell that you try to rush Jayden Daniels back. Even if somehow Washington musters up some wins and they make playoff. No. Let that man sit. Let that man rest. Now, I, just like every other Washington Commanders fan, was asking the same exact question as soon as the injury happened. Why was Jayden Daniels in the game in garbage minutes when you're down 31 points at the time? And Dan Quinn came out and said, that was on me. I apologize. I take full responsibility for it. That was on me. Now, I've heard what Club Shay Shay and Shannon Sharp has said. I've heard what SportsCenter First Take has said. I've heard what Manuel Acho and Speakeasy. I've heard what Nick Wright and First Things First has said. Brew, and dang, I forgot his name has slipped my mind, but I've heard what he said. While yes, I do appreciate the apology and the onus of what happened, because a lot of coaches wouldn't do that. A lot of coaches would say, we were looking and you want to play to the end, and you never know it's over until it's over. That's not true. When you're down 31 points in the fourth quarter, it's over, bro. We'll talk about one game in a second, but there's not a miraculous 31 points you're going to get in 4 minutes. It's just not happening. So I respect and I appreciate the apology. I appreciate the acknowledgement. But there's also a part of me that also agrees with Shannon Sharp said. I mean, your apologies ain't going to do nothing now. Jayden Daniels, and the injury happened. And I thank you, Jesus Christ, that it's not as serious. But there was remnants of Derrick Rose and his injury. I'm not, you're up 21 points in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left. Why is Derrick Rose still in the game? A lot of people want to point to Jayden Daniels' stature and his weight, being he's probably like 190 or something like that, being a very skinny person. And I do agree to that extent. I don't think he's been injured 3 times this year, all in completely different areas. And I'm not one of those people to say, you see, I told you he should have bulked up. I would like for him to bulk up, but I don't want it to be at the expense of his game. But it's like, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. And I thank God that it was his non-throwing arm because, and it also, I think the MRI revealed there's no structural damage. It's just a dislocation. But still, he might have to wear a splint on his arm for the rest of his career. A lot of people, and I think I don't remember who did it, but a lot of people are comparing, obviously, his injury to RG3's. And even RG3 came out and had something to say about it. These are 2 completely different people. And even in that, I hope that this organization does look at what happened with RG3 and understand, let's not rush this. We have a franchise quarterback. Let's not rush this. This season is cooked. Let's rest him. He can get fully healthy. Let's try to figure out how we can fix this defense. Let's get Terry McLaurin healthy. Let's get, these players healthy so that when we do, maybe probably next season, field a better team or put a better team on the field, that we have the best chance at winning. I heard a lot of people call for Dan Quinn's job after this. And I also hear a lot of people saying Jayden Daniels didn't want to come out the game either. Like, wow, no, they didn't push for Jayden Daniels not to play. Jayden Daniels would not have wanted to come out the game. My response to both of those is, for the Dan Quinn, I don't think I think this was a mistake, which is what he's saying. It was on me. I think it was a mistake, but I don't think it was a fireable mistake. I think Dan Quinn has proven himself to be a really good head coach and be a really good head coach for this team. It's just the issues that you see, like, even though you did hire Joe Witt as a defensive coordinator who has been one of the worst. Again, goes back to what I was talking about with Miami. I want everyone black to win. I want everyone black to succeed. But if you get an opportunity, a good opportunity, and you blow it, that's when you leave. Joe Witt has been god-awful as a defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. Like, he's been terrible. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. But shout out to Seahawks, man. They are a legit playoff / Super Bowl contender. Sam Darnold, when he's on, he's on. They have one of the best, and we're going to talk about the trade deadline towards the end of the show. They have one of the best 1-2 punches at this point at the wide receiver position. Kenneth Walker didn't have to do much, and he was good. Like, this is a team. This is a squad right here. So, shout out to Seattle for beating Washington 38-14. Yo, I've never seen, not never, but I have not seen a crazier ending to a football game in a while than I did when I watched the Chicago Bears beat the Cincinnati Bengals 47-42. Yo, Cincinnati scored, 21 or 25 points in the span of 3 minutes? Or maybe a minute and a half. Joe Flacco at hit over 40 threw the most passing yards he's thrown in his career with 470. 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Caleb Williams, game-winning pass to Colston Loveland, 6 receptions for 118 yards. Kyle Monogla, I don't know, 26 carries for 176 yards. Bro, I am not sure which defense is worse or which defense was worse on Sunday or this week, the Cincinnati Bengals or the Dallas Cowboys, which we will discuss in a second. You had Chase Brown come out and pretty much talk about the defense like, bro, we fought all the way back. We took the lead. All you have to do is get a stop, get a tackle, and you couldn't do that. Both of these teams aren't that good, bro. The defense are supposed to be as stout on paper as the Chicago Bears defense gave up 42 points. Yeah. Chase Brown, you can't talk about your team like you can't call out your. I agree with everyone when they say you can't call out your defense like that, especially when you only had 11 carries for 37 yards. You did have 8 receptions for 75 yards, and one. Oh, you didn't even have a touchdown. So yeah, stop talking to me. But yeah, man. This they don't respect this defense so much that Caleb Williams caught two passes. They drew up 2 plays where Caleb Williams put himself in harm's way and turn him into a receiver where he can get blasted. They did that twice, and one of them was for a touchdown. Cincinnati Bengals. This defense is poor. Bro, did y'all see Shamar Moore hit, man? I'm sorry, Shamar Stewart, how the offensive lineman just carried him to the man. And y'all talking about rush Joe Burrow back. Joe Burrow ain't saving this, bro. How much did? Yo, you damn near allowed 300 receiving yards and 300 rushing yards. The Chicago Bears rushed for 283 yards. They were 17 yards away from a 300 rushing yard game. And because they had 302 passing yards. This Cincinnati Bengals defense might be one of the worst in history. For the second straight year, might I add. Man. Congratulations to Chicago Bears for beating Cincinnati Bengals 47-42. talking about surprise of the week. I didn't foresee the Pittsburgh Steelers defense finally coming alive this season and beating the Indianapolis Colts 27-20. Yo, they forced six. Was it six? They forced 6 turnovers. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, the one that has been pretty much horrible this entire year, finally played up to standard and beat the best team in the league. Now, a lot of people are saying, "Oh no," like the Indianapolis Colts are you put them back to reality. Daniel Jones was horrible, like no. Daniel Jones threw for 342 yards. The only issue is he threw 3 interceptions. If you take out those 3 interceptions, that's the thing. You can look at both of these teams and have discouraging and encouraging thoughts about both. The Pittsburgh Steelers forced 6 turnovers and only won by 7 points. Daniel Jones threw 3 interceptions and still had 342 yards. This defense was hellacious. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense was hellacious. Only holding Jonathan Taylor, who in my opinion was the front runner for the MVP going into this game, only held him to 45 yards. Well, if you want to count his receiving, it was 12 receiving, only 57 yards total. Yet you only still won by 27. I mean, you only won by 7 points. I think if you minimize, obviously, the turnovers, then this is a very different game, and the Colts might blow out the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it is something to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers played the best game defensively I've seen them play all season. They have not played a better defensive show. There has not been a better defensive showing for the Pittsburgh Steelers all year, and you only won by 7 points. But congratulations for beating the Indianapolis Colts 27-20. I talked about it. I said, I don't know whose defense was worse, the Cincinnati Bengals or the Dallas Cowboys. Arizona went into Dallas and beat Dallas 27-17. Now, let's talk about this game briefly. When you trade your best defensive player, you're essentially saying that, one, you can reach your goals without them, and 2, you have the ultimate faith in your offense. Because you know that your defense is going to take a step back, is going to take a hit. But you have all the ultimate faith in your offense that it can carry the day. Especially when you pay Dak what you pay Dak. You pay CeeDee Lamb what you pay CeeDee Lamb. You go and get George Pickens. And there was a couple weeks where you can look at Dak Prescott and say he was an MVP candidate. Some would even say he was an MVP front runner. But here's my thing. When you trade your best defensive player and your offense isn't playing that well, you get what you get from Dallas. 3-5. This team is not even remotely close to being balanced. Again, we'll talk about the trade deadline at the end of the episode, because this team did get a little better defensively, but we'll talk about it. But going into this game, you made Jacoby Brissett look like, in fact, Jacoby Brissett looked so good in this game that they named him the starting quarterback moving forward. We don't have to stay on this long. No one should be shocked at this. No one. We knew this is what we were going to see, especially from a defense, or especially from a team where you gave up your best defender a week before the season started. So your margin of error shrunk. So now when you have Javonte Williams fumbling the ball, like it's Dak Prescott throwing interceptions, the offensive line getting beat. They had Calais Campbell look like he wasn't one of the oldest, if not the oldest, defensive player in the league. Dallas is not a good team. It's not balanced. And on the days where the offense doesn't have it, the defense ain't never going to pick them up like this game. Now let's talk about Jacoby Brissett and Kyler Murray. I think there are two trains of thought now that we know that Jacoby Brissett moving forward will remain the starting quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. It's not lost to me that we saw that report after Jacoby Brissett was named the starter, that it came out that they said that the Cardinals want to give Kyler Murray more time to heal. I think that there are people in the organization that understand and that know and that have seen Jacoby Brissett as a starting quarterback. And they know this ain't going to be for long. No offense to Jacoby Brissett. He played incredible against Dallas, but there's a reason why he was a backup. Jacoby Brissett is one of the best backups in football, but we've seen what he looks like as a starter. That ain't lasting for long. But I do think that this is a major indictment to Kyler Murray, and it goes back to what I said in the beginning of the season. What is the ceiling for this team when Kyler Murray is the quarterback? I think Kyler Murray has immense talent, but it hasn't necessarily shown itself as wins in the NFL. And when you're a top pick, when you're a Heisman winner, like people don't got time for this. People don't got time for you to develop. And now to think about it, how long has Kyler Murray been in the league? Kyler Murray been in the league for, let me see. He's been in the league for 6 years? Yeah, bro. No. People ain't got time. Because all you have to your name right now in 2 years in the NFL is an offensive rookie of the year and 2-time Pro Bowler. That's it. I think, shout out to Drew Brees. Drew Brees got a lot of Drew Brees and Russell Wilson got a lot of short quarterbacks paid and a lot of short quarterbacks drafted. And I think Kyler Murray is exceptional. Don't get me wrong, but it's like it hasn't amounted to anything in the league. So when you see this Arizona Cardinals team, and they look damn good, albeit against the Cowboys, but they look damn good with Jacoby Brissett as their starter, of course you're going to be like, well, why would we stop this momentum? I'm not saying it's over with for Kyler Murray, but I don't know too many people that got benched and came back and just had electric careers after that. Not saying it can't happen. I just don't know too many that it happened to, is all I'm saying. But congratulations to the Arizona Cardinals for beating the Cowboys 27-17. This is probably one of the more shocking outcomes of the day. The Minnesota Vikings beat the Detroit Lions 27-24. I understand that this was divisional rivalry, so anything can happen. But the defense for sure carried the day. The defense got much needed stops. They got the defense of Minnesota got the stop or the forced fumble, which then they ultimately scored from David Montgomery. This was a defensive game. And J.J. McCarthy didn't have to do much. He looked good in the time that he had, but, only threw 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He didn't have to do much. This was one of the more shocking games. It felt like, and shout out to Brian Flores for being an exceptional defensive coordinator. It just felt like a lot of times, a lot of drives stalled for the Lions. And that's shout out to, I know I talked about, wasn't it Isaiah Rodgers? Yeah. I talked about Isaiah Rodgers when I don't remember who he got cooked by, but he got cooked. And he's having a hell of a season. I failed to mention that when I said he's having a great season. He just got cooked that one game. But yeah, man, the Lions, actually I think it might have been against the Chiefs. I don't know. But congratulations to the Minnesota Vikings for beating the Detroit Lions 27-24. I'm not really concerned much about the Lions. I do think that when you get Jared Goff off kilter, which 25 for 37 for 284 yards, you have a good shot, even though he did throw 2 touchdowns. So, I just think it was a defensive game. So shout out to them. Shout out to, again, the Vikings. This was the worst loss of the day. I've been saying this all season, but people have been looking at me, and they're looking at their record like, Jalen, you hating. Jalen, you clearly don't know what you're talking about. The Panthers went into Green Bay and beat Green Bay 16-13. I've been saying this all season that the Green Bay Packers are not playing like a Super Bowl caliber team. They have a Super Bowl caliber team on paper, but they're not playing like one. And, Jordan Love be throwing some of the worst passes I've seen. As talented as he is, as good as this receiving core that he is, he be throwing some, he be throwing some terrible passes. The man ran and then threw the ball across the field. Right to when the camera zoomed out and followed the ball, all you saw was a Carolina Panther. If I'm not mistaken, Mike Jackson. All you saw was Mike Jackson on screen. I didn't see a Green Bay Packer anywhere close to me. Now, obviously, you know what they say, the reason why you play defense is because you couldn't catch the ball, which is why you're not a receiver. He threw it right to Mike Jackson, and it dropped. But that would have been the game-sealing interception. Their defense didn't play horrible as well. You held them to 16 points, but it's like this team has not looked. This team maybe looked like a Super Bowl caliber team once this year, and it's like, bro, I don't know what to tell you. don't get me wrong, Carolina is better than they were in the beginning of the season, but Rico Dowd had 25 carries for 130 yards. The man had more rushing yards than Bryce Young had passing yards. So I take that back. The defense wasn't great. Yeah, this Green Bay Packers team is not playing like a Super Bowl caliber team at all. Congratulations to the Carolina Panthers for beating the Green Bay Packers 16-13. Yeah, we're gonna. The LA Rams beat the Saints 34-10. I think Puka Nacua got hurt this game, but he still finished with 95 receiving yards. When they're playing well, when they're going, there's not many people that can beat this Rams team. That's kind of why I had it so high. Now, yeah, the Saints are the Saints. They're not that good, but the Rams, when they get cooking, they are one of the best teams in football. Matthew Stafford, some of the passes, and his connection with Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams don't be having gaudy numbers. Like, he doesn't have like 150, 200 passing yards, or receiving yards, but he does. He had, two touchdowns. This Rams team is a wagon, man. When they get going, there's tough to stop. So, congratulations to the Rams for beating the Saints 34-10. Like they're just, that's a juggernaut right there. The Patriots continue winning and beat the Falcons 24-23. Bro, this is the year of terrible kicking. Bro, the Falcons fought all the way back to get the touchdown just for the kicker to miss an extra point. And it wasn't even, Drake London had himself a game. 9 receptions for 118 yards. Bijan Robinson collectively had 96 yards. Yeah. But that damn cooker. And, this is yet another week where this Patriots team looks really good. I'll give them credit, man. They're winning. So, shout out to the Falcons shout out to the Patriots for beating the Falcons 24-23. The Chargers went into Tennessee and beat them 27-20, but again, they lost Joe Alt for the season. That was Rashad Slater's replacement. Now, I know that they got somebody in at the trade deadline, which again we'll talk about, but that's tough. Now, this is yet another game where Justin Herbert finished as the leading rusher of the team. He had 250 passing yards and 57 rushing yards. So he had 307 yards total. I don't know how sustainable that is when Justin Herbert is your best passer and rusher. This isn't the Ravens, as good as Lamar Jackson is, there's even a ceiling with that. That's why they went and got Derrick Henry. So, oh man. But in the Tennessee, they're still not good. So, yeah, man, that Joe Alt injury, which also he was the replacement for Rashad Slater. It's like when your offensive line is taking hit after hit after hit, it's like yikes, you know. But congratulations on the win. Bro, I respect, as much as they lost, I respect the Las Vegas Raiders, man. So Jacksonville went into Las Vegas and beat them 30-29. Geno Smith didn't play terrible, he just didn't play great. He had 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 284 yards. He didn't play terrible. But what I said I respect is the game goes into overtime. Geno Smith forces overtime. He sliced dice at the end, overtime. And they score, and they could have just played for a tie. A tie doesn't hurt, but doesn't help. But nobody wants to play for a tie. I respect that they went for it. At the end of the game, win or lose, we're going to go for it. And Geno Smith had homie wide open. And he saw him, and he passed it to him. But the ball got batted down at the line of scrimmage. It was tough. But it was, again, I respect the Vegas Raiders for going for it. Because they didn't have to. But I respect them, even though they didn't win. So shout out to Jacksonville. Yo, I know Jacksonville just got we'll talk about it when we talk about the trade deadline, but them losing possibly Travis Hunter for the season is huge. They need him. Yeah. But congratulations to them for beating the Raiders 30-29. The Broncos get another win. They're 7-2 at this point. The Broncos beat the Houston Texans 18-15. I don't think they're a Super Bowl caliber team because of their offense, but when their offense makes the right play when they need to, and their defense is as stout as it is, I think the Broncos are definitely a Super Bowl caliber team in the sense of the totality of the team. And we talked about this with the Ravens. Shout out to Booger McFarland. He said it perfectly. Talk about the Ravens and talking about the Texans. We're starting to lose Sundays, and which means you're losing opportunity to turn your season around. C.J. Stroud went out with a concussion. I don't know if he's going to play this week, but he was out with a concussion, and they lost again. Right now, they're 3-5. There's only so much time that you have to turn the season around before you can't do that anymore. And as great as the Houston Texans defense is, they're still 3-5. So I don't want C.J. Stroud to be hurt. I hope for a speedy recovery. I hope it's not serious, but you're losing opportunities, man. So, but congratulations to the Broncos for beating the Texans 18-15. And the last game to talk about, the San Francisco 49ers beat the Giants for 34-24. Christian, they said they did it again. Yo, Christian, please just put us on your back, bro. The man rushed 28 times for 106 yards and had 5 receptions for 67. So he had 173 yards on the day. Mac Jones had another good game, 235 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, but this was Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. And Jackson Dart. Yeah. That was that. That was week 9. And of course I talked about, which is why this episode is actually coming out a little bit later, is the trade deadline happened. And there were some under the radar moves that definitely, that could help the league or change the league right now. Like the Chargers adding Trevor Penning from the Saints from the offensive line. Now, the Saints ain't that good, and their offensive line hasn't been that good. So I'm a little, it could be important, but who knows? Now, and obviously the 2 biggest acquisitions at the trade deadline was the Cowboys getting Quentin Williams and the Colts getting Sauce Gardner. Now, I think that this is extremely smart by the Jets. I think out of those two, or from those two, Quentin Williams and Sauce Gardner, I think they got like 6 or 7 first-round draft picks. And you weren't going anywhere this season. You weren't going anywhere next season. You kind of have a Oklahoma City Thunder type situation. You have a lot of first round picks that you can use. You either package them up and trade them for a star, or find something in the draft. It's like you have a lot. You knew you weren't going anywhere with this roster, so now you have a ample amount of opportunity to build for the future. For the Colts, you get arguably one of the best corners in the league. We'll see, obviously he does need to develop a little bit in how he reads defenses and stuff, but Sauce Gardner, that just shores up your defense exponentially. And your defense is already good, the Colts. And now you get one of the best defensive players possibly in the league. So, and then the Cowboys. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, how great this was and how stupid this was. I say like this. Quentin Williams is one of the best rushing defenders, best run stoppers in the league. I know Jerry Jones was very big on we need to be able to stop the run, which is one of the reasons why Michael Parsons ain't there now. But Quentin Williams wasn't good on the Jets. I mean, the Jets were trash defensively. But I do think that Quentin Williams does help them. But it's like, for all that you got with Quentin Williams and Kenny Clark, to give up Michael Parsons, like, that's still a lot. But I do think that the Cowboys are better with, obviously, Quentin Williams than without. I think one of the biggest gifts was the Seahawks getting Rashid Shaheed, a great number 2 receiver. Pairing him alongside Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be huge for that team. Extremely huge for the team. What else? The Jaguars getting Jacoby Meyer, that was big because, again, Hunter is not going to be there for the foreseeable future. So that, you add a veteran wide receiver to play alongside Brian Thomas. That was big. And the Ravens getting, what's the dude's name? The Ravens getting Draymond Jones from the Titans was huge. They definitely need a pass rusher, and especially with Matabike not being there for the season, that was huge. So I think the Dallas Cowboys are better today with Quentin Williams than they were without him. We'll see if that changes this season around, which it could, but I don't know. And the Colts I think the Colts, if you get the best Sauce Gardner possible, I think that they're much better today. In fact, the Colts are better. The Cowboys are better with Quentin Williams. I think the Jets did great getting as much as they got for those two. The Ravens are better with that pass rusher. The Seahawks are better with Rashid Shaheed, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are better with Jacoby Myers. So I am surprised that a team like Washington didn't do something. I'm surprised that the Steelers didn't do something. When you look at their wide receiver situation, when you look at their defense situation, I'm surprised they didn't do anything, especially the wide receiver situation. I'm surprised that the Bills didn't do anything. There are some teams I'm surprised they didn't do anything, but, we'll see. Maybe because Washington's dealing with a bevy of injuries. Maybe that's why, but hey. And there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link's in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. If you like the content, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It definitely means a lot. I'm trying to grow the podcast, and I cannot do it without you guys, so please, please subscribe. Also, for my DSPs, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your DSPs, wherever you want to hear my luscious voice, please subscribe. I'm trying to grow the podcast unilaterally, and I cannot do it without you guys' help. So please rate, subscribe, comment, share, all that. For my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, please follow. That's probably the quickest way to get to me. That's where you get reels, stories. Just leave it in the comment. I don't mind going back and forth and debating. Just keep it respectful. And again, I don't mind going back and forth. It just means that you're passionate about whatever, or you have an opinion about whatever we're talking about, and you're listening to me. Both I appreciate. But yeah, leave it in the comments, and I don't mind going back and forth. Until next time, much love.